Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if all those hours spent playing video games actually make you a better observer of the world around you? Today we're diving into a fascinating study that asks, do action video gamers search better than non-gamers? This is a question that pops up a lot. We hear that gamers might have super sharp vision, quicker reflexes, and can spot things others miss. But is it true? And if so, how exactly do they do it? Researchers decided to put this to the test with a whole bunch of experiments. They looked at gamers and non-gamers doing visual search tasks, which is basically looking for a specific item among a lot of other stuff. Think about it. Action games are fast. You've got enemies popping up, quick decisions to make, and you need to spot important things on screen, like health packs or objectives. So it makes sense that playing these games might train your brain to be a better visual detective. Previous studies have hinted at this, suggesting gamers are better at things like seeing more in their field of vision, spotting things faster, and even remembering more items at once. But here is where things get interesting. Not all studies agree. Some researchers have found no real difference between gamers and non-gamers in these visual skills. So this new study wanted to get to the bottom of it by doing a really thorough job. They designed 12 different experiments to look at various aspects of visual search. They weren't just looking at one type of task. They used simple tasks where you could easily spot the target, and harder tasks where the target was trickier to find. They even included tasks that looked like things you'd see in video games. To be super thorough, they used two main ways to measure performance. One was using a psychophysical staircase procedure. This sounds fancy, but it is basically a clever way to figure out the absolute minimum amount of time a display needs to be shown, or the smallest difference in color for someone to spot the target. Think of it as finding the exact limit of their perception. The other method involved measuring how long it took people to respond and how efficient their search was, especially when the number of items on the screen changed. They even created game-style figures to see if gamers were particularly better at searching for things that resemble game elements. They ran these experiments with two groups: action video gamers who played at least 5 hours a week, and non-gamers who played less than 1 hour a week. So, what did they find? Let's break it down. First, they looked at how quickly people could process visual information and how well they could tell the target color from the distracting colors. If gamers were better, you'd expect them to need less time on screen or a smaller color difference to find the target, especially when the search was difficult. But interestingly, in most cases, there was no real difference. Gamers didn't process visual information significantly faster. Their perception speed didn't show a big leap. However, there was one small area where gamers showed a bit of an edge, but it was a bit nuanced. In one specific type of experiment, when they were identifying the target's color, gamers' ability to discriminate colors wasn't affected as much by increased search difficulty, like having more items on the screen or the target being further away. Their color discrimination exhibited a higher robustness against search difficulty, as the paper puts it. This suggests that while their basic color perception wasn't necessarily better, their ability to use that color perception in a tricky search was a little more resilient. But this didn't hold up across all the tests. Next, they looked at response times in more common search tasks, where people could look at the screen as long as they needed. Here, they were checking if gamers were just plain faster. And again, the results were mostly a big zilch. In most of the experiments, there was no significant difference in how fast gamers and non-gamers responded. There was a slight, nearly their trend, for gamers to be a tiny bit faster in some conditions. But it wasn't strong enough to be a clear win. They also checked how efficient the search was. Efficiency here means how much slower you get when there are more items to search through. You'd expect gamers to be more efficient, meaning the time it takes to find something shouldn't increase too much as you add more distractions. But for search efficiency, they found no real difference between the groups at all. Gamers weren't better at handling more items. In fact, in some of the harder tasks, gamers actually performed worse, suffering more from increased set size, meaning they got slower faster than non-gamers. This is quite the opposite of what you might expect. To really push the limits, they used harder tasks. In these, the target was much harder to distinguish from the distractors. This requires careful, item-by-item inspection. They even used game-style figures. The idea was that if gamers have an advantage, it would really show up here. But again, the results were surprisingly flat. There were no significant differences in search speed or efficiency, and in one of these harder tasks, gamers actually struggled more as the number of items increased, which was a bit of a surprise. And what about switching in video games? You often have to quickly switch your attention between different targets or tasks. They tested how well gamers and non-gamers could switch between looking for one thing and then another. They found only a very marginal benefit for gamers in one of the experiments. It was so close to being not significant that it is barely a whisper of an advantage. So let's sum up the overarching story from all those experiments. The researchers basically found very little evidence for gamers having superior visual search skills across the board. They looked at speed, efficiency, and the ability to discriminate targets. In most of the 12 experiments, there were no significant group differences. They did find a few small, sometimes marginal wins for gamers. The one that stood out a bit was in the perceptual thresholds, meaning their ability to tell colors apart wasn't as bothered by search difficulty in one specific test. They also saw a tiny hint of gamers being slightly faster or a bit better at switching tasks in a couple of experiments. But these were few and far between. What is really telling is that when the tasks got harder, any tiny gamer advantage tended to disappear or even flip, with gamers sometimes performing worse. This study really challenges the common belief that action video gamers are automatically better at visual search. While some previous studies have shown greater effects, this extensive battery of tests suggests that the advantage might be much smaller than we thought, or perhaps only present in very specific, easy tasks. The researchers point out a few things. First, the effect size might be smaller than previously assumed, meaning you'd need a much larger group of people to consistently detect a difference. Second, they noted the sex distribution in their groups, with more females in the non-gamer group and more males in the gamer group, and wondered if this could have played a role, as sex can influence visual processing. They also considered that the students they studied might be used to experiments, which could have boosted their general search skills. One of the most important takeaways for me is how the study highlights that the benefits of gaming expertise might not be as general as we assume. The tasks that showed the smallest differences were often the harder ones. It really makes you think about what real-world skills gaming might be enhancing. Maybe it is not about raw visual processing speed, but something more nuanced like decision making under pressure or strategic planning, which this study didn't directly measure. So what does this mean for us? It is a reminder that while video games can be incredibly engaging and fun, we should be a bit cautious about assuming they automatically grant superpowers in every aspect of visual perception. The research suggests that for visual search, at least the benefits are subtle, inconsistent, and often disappear when the task gets tough. It is not a magic bullet for better vision, but it is fascinating to see how researchers are systematically trying to uncover these subtle differences. What do you all think about these findings? Are you a gamer that feels you have super search skills, or does this study resonate with your experience? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to Rubin's Mind Lab for more science explained simply, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next dive into the human mind. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.